to talk to you guys real quick about something that's been kind of hitting me in my head a lot lately, like a ton. And that's why are we doing what we're doing? You know, do you really want to get better at golf, or is it something that you're just doing to pass the time, right? So I think there's two type of people. There's two types of people out there, right? Actually, three. There's the one that their entire life is like predicated on how good their game is at that moment, right? Even if they're a 30 handicapper or a someone who is someone who is just um a scratch golfer. Everything is predicated on like I got to get better at golf. I got to get better. I got to get better, right? Then there's the other kind of guy who he just wants to go out there and just have some fun and just be with his people and get out the house, get away from the wife, or the wife get away from the husband or whatever, right? And they just want to be outside, simple as that, right? And then there's the third person who he's a grinder, he wants to get better, but it's not a priority. It's just not a big priority, right? So you got to figure out which one are you. Like, are you the priority? Are you the half priority guy? Are you the full priority guy? Are you the I don't care, right? So if you're the priority, if you're in one of those priority ones and you're constantly trying to get better, you're on YouTube all the time looking at videos or on Instagram, or you're looking at training aids, you're asking tons of questions all the time, and you're one of those guys that go to the range and hits 100 balls and they never got better, right? That's something that you got to think about, right? And something that everyone needs to think about is, why do you go to the range and hit a million balls, right? Doing the exact same bad things over and over and over again. Okay. So a lot of people, it's so funny to me because a lot of people are like, oh, I want to get a launch monitor and I want to get all this new technology. You know what my launch monitor is? The ball flight, right? I would love to get a launch monitor, right? But it's just I don't have the space for it in my home and right now. And they have some really inexpensive ones too, some really good ones. But it's just a matter of I don't have it's a matter of I'm watching a ball flight. Like if I see a ball go left, I'm hooking the ball. And there's only a couple of reasons why you're hooking the ball. If I see a ball, banana off to the right, there's only two or three reasons why that's happening. Okay. We know that. All right. Club face, path. That's really it. So you gotta start using the ball flight. So when you go out to the driving range, use your ball flight. Okay, if it's too high, maybe you're coming in too steep into the ball, right? If it's too low, maybe you're hitting a little thin. All these different things, right? You got to think about just based on ball flight. Okay, they didn't have ball. Jack Nicholson didn't have ball flight. I mean, he didn't have launch monitors. Okay, Arnold Palmer didn't have a launch monitor. Of course not. So how are they so good? Ben Hogan and all these guys, right? They didn't have all this technology. So how are they so good? I don't know. I think I know based on ball flight. Okay, so make sure you take care of that. But back to what I was talking about in regards to what is your why, right? What drives you? What pushes you? Why do you want to continue to get better and better and better? I think the number one reason why most people want to get better, the big reason why a lot of people want to get better, they just want to like play well in front of their friends. That's really what it comes down to. It's a huge golf is a huge ego trip. That's what it is. It's a huge ego trip. And a lot of people are basing their entire existence off of their handicap or based it off of, how you play on a Sunday, on a Saturday morning with you and a couple of your friends, right? Your life is not your handicap. It's not. It's not. Okay. There's only a very, very, very small percentage of us, 2%, 1% of golfers around the world that are getting paid to play professionally. Okay, I mean you can win some money in a little skins pot, but that are getting paid to play. All right, so don't take it so seriously. All right, just go out there and have some fun. The guys that I see that have a certain mentality, guys and girls. I don't when I say guys, I mean both sex. That have a certain mentality of a free spirit, okay, like a free, lazy, I shouldn't say lazy, laissez-faire type of a spirit, right? Where they just come out there, they do their thing. They don't make too much of it or too little of it, right? They take it seriously, but it's not that serious. Those are the people who get better really fast. I've noticed, right? The people who are like too much into it, right? They're just like too much. It's like just step back, relax. You're gonna get better if you take a step backwards, kind of thing, right? Those are the people who take forever to get better. All right. Because they're just too much. It's just too much. They're thinking about it too much. It's all up here, right? So that Bruce Lee line of, conscious, what did he say? Consciousness of self is the opposite of fluidity. And what does that mean, right? If you're thinking about positions and getting better and all these things and your hands are and all this different stuff, right? You're not you're not moving like water. You're not moving fluid in your swing, right? And so I really try to teach just being fluid. You have to have certain core principles in your swing. You have to have a solid grip, okay? In your fingers, not in your palms. Loose wrists. Wrists have to stay really, really loose, right? Arms are turned off. Okay. We have to pivot and use our entire body in that turn, not just the shoulders, not just the hips, not just the knees. Use our entire body in that turn. But we can't get caught up in the turn has to happen. Okay. But we can't get caught up in manipulation. Okay. And I think that's where a lot of people get twisted because they get caught up in manipulation. And they're trying to make sure that the club head is a certain way at impact. Whereas you should just allow the club head to be. Okay. There's a certain level of zen, I guess you could say, about the golf swing. What I teach anyway, right? And you have to allow the club head and the body to do what it naturally wants to do. When you're skipping a rock, when you're throwing a football, when you're playing tennis, most of us just like pick up these things, pick up a rock and skip a rock across a lake. We just naturally do it. Okay, it's like a natural thing that we can do, right? Versus versus like say for instance, you pick up a golf club and people just want to manipulate the club head so many different ways. All right, that's never going to work. Not long term. I mean, you could probably get by with manipulation, but I think long term, it's not going to work. It's just really really not going to work. So we really got to make sure that when we grab hold of our club, okay, we start to think of what would our arms, the club is an extension of our arms, right? What would our arms do if our arms were turned off and we were just allowing the body to turn? Okay, so if the club is an extension of our arms, the club has to just naturally want to move as well. It can't be manipulated. Okay, I think that's where a lot of people get hung up in the manipulation of the clubs, right? And you see some of these long drivers, right? They're just freewheeling. They're disconnecting at the top from their arms and body are disconnecting. They're swinging the club way behind their head, almost touching the ground on the backswing, just crazy stuff, right? To create this big, huge circle, right? So they're not thinking about, I guarantee you that most long drivers, like people who are like really into long driving, they're not thinking about a lot of technique. It's more turn as far as I can and turn back through as hard as I can, right? It's a lot of it is turn, turn. All right. So if you really watch it, like I watched, I guess that was last year. I watched a ton of long drive stuff, right? Just to look at these guys' hips. And I mean, yeah, you got to compete on the tour now, on the long drive tour. Most of those guys, I mean, there's a few smaller guys, but most of those guys are just huge human beings, right? 6'5", 255, they're just big guys, right? Creating a whole lot of power. But there's a few. There's a few like Berkshire. He's not big at all. He's not that big of a guy, right? But he creates a ton of club head speed. He creates a huge circle, but he creates a ton of club head speed because of the fact that he is moving that body at breakneck speed. So yeah, think about all that. But anyway, back to why. Start asking yourself the question of why. Okay. Why am I out here and it's 45 degrees and I'm working on my putting on a Sunday morning? Why am I, leaving work and trying to get in a quick nine? Why am I? What's the why? Like, why are you doing all this? Right? Is it to get better? Is it because to get a relief from your everyday world? Is it because you want to, um, yeah, just get away, from everything? I think a lot of people aren't really playing to get better. They're just playing as an outlet. So, and if that's your why, then that's your why. That's perfectly fine, right? But I think a lot of people are just playing just to have an outlet, just to have something else to do. Right now things are a little squirrely, um, in America or in the world. And I think a lot of people need that outlet. So I think that's really important. So figure out your why. Okay, figure out why you're working, and then once you start answering the question of, oh, I'm doing this because of A, B, and C, or if there's a big A reason, then start saying, okay, well, if that's the case, let me go ahead and start figuring out, okay, if I know now why I want to get better. Okay, and that's because I got a big tournament coming up, or I'm playing, I've got a big road trip, golf trip with the fellas. I'm going to Boca Raton, in the spring, and I want to play extraordinarily well. um if that's the case, then start formalizing a plan of action. Okay, I think that everybody should be goal oriented versus just willy nilly out there just trying to get better. Okay, you got to start focusing in on. And I always say when you first start really getting, I mean, if you're a seasoned golfer, you've been playing for a while, versus somebody who's brand new, it's a little bit different, right? But if you're a seasoned golfer and you've been playing for a while, let's say you can pretty consistently shoot in the 90s or 80s or 70s, right? Got to start with that short game. That's the only way you're going to get better. It's not, I'm telling you, I've seen this a million times, a billion times, right? People think, oh, if I can just hit my driver, I'm going to get better. No, no, no. And I've proven it with people. I've gone out with folks with a hybrid or with a 4 iron, don't even take a wood, and shot low scores. Okay, so it's about who can control the flat stick, who can control your putter the best. You're going to use the putter more than any other club, and it's about who can chip, pitch from 100 yards and in. If you can stick that, if the 100 yards and in is so critical, for you longer hitters, or play guys that play longer courses, maybe 125 and in, but 100 yards and in, if you can get really consistent. Like for instance, if you go to the driver range, right, and you say to yourself, okay, there's a 100-yard marker out there, right? And if you can hit a ball 70 to 80% of the time. So you took 10 balls, 7 or 8 out of 10. So let's say 75%, right? Whatever. If you can hit those shots over and over again and be extraordinarily consistent with 100 yards and in, I can almost guarantee your scores will come down. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, folks. I can almost guarantee your scores will come down, right? Because then you're not, if you're 100 yards out, you put it on the green and you two putt, you're dancing. You're dancing. Okay. If you're 100 yards and out, and then you blow it past the green, or you hit it short, left or right, then you still got a chip. Then you still probably going two putts. So basically, you've automatically added another stroke to that particular hole. Okay, just because you can't get on in regulation, right? So if that's the number one, that's what the number one thing I'm talking about all the time is 100 yards and in, I'm really talking about greens in regulation. I'm talking about trying to get on in regulation as much as possible. I mean, that's common sense, right? But if you really focus on um, the 100 yards and in stuff, I think you'll be in a really, really good situation, down the road, to just to get better. Okay, so focus in on that, right? There's a million, drills that you could be doing, and don't just sit there, and don't just sit there and 100 yards, 100 yards. No, 100 yards, 75 yards, 85 yards, 50 yards, and get that feel, right? Use different clubs, use different flights. Sometimes you might want to hit a pitching wedge super high, let it come down on the green. Sometimes you may want to hit, I don't know, a 9 iron 100 yards and flight it down and let it like bounce up on the front fringe and hit the green. So you got to get good with all that, right? You got to get good with working the ball with different clubs and different trajectories as much as you possibly can. I'm telling you, if you get good with that, you dance. And to be honest with you, if you really get good with those distances, to incorporate a longer game, now say you got to go hit a 7 or a 6 iron, par three. I think it makes the game a lot easier because you start swinging the longer clubs smoother as well. Okay, so just think about all those things. Think about what your why is. Think about getting better, and I honestly think that you will get better. You will get better, right? You got to start putting out goals for 2026. Like what is my goal for the new year? I mean, it's August 21st. I mean, it's August. It's November 21st right now, 2025. So you got what, a little more than 5 weeks to just get in your head like, okay, this is what I want to work on. This is what I want to do for 2026 in regards to my golf game. All right. And just remember, flat stick, wedges, flat stick, wedges. That's the key. All right. You guys have a great weekend. And I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.